Hey, g'day, it's Prezzo. Thanks for stopping by. Now, I just want to give you a quick update on what's happening on Prezzo World, the YouTube channel. Now, I've been doing this YouTube thing for the last 10 years now, and during that time I've made over 220 videos on this channel, and they're all shop-related subjects. And during that period I've never bothered to monetize any of the videos. Now, my reasoning for doing that is twofold. Firstly, it just adds another layer of complexity to making videos, which is complex enough as it is. And the other thing was that because of my background education, I've always believed that education should be free. And I don't want to be sort of charging money for what I do. I just want you to come here and watch the videos. I don't want you to think that you paid money and then you're disappointed what you see. So if you don't like a video, well, it didn't cost you anything. Now, that was all going really well until just recently, and then people started to comment that they were seeing advertising on my videos, which was a bit strange because I had never gone through that process of monetizing the channel. And when I read YouTube's latest policy, they said that they now reserve the right to insert advertising on any videos, whether the creator had joined their partnership program or not. Now, I was a bit annoyed about that, and I had a bit of a rant about it a couple of videos back. And people just said, look, just take the money. It doesn't matter. If the ads are going to be there anyway, you might as well get the money for them. And then another commenter said, if you feel bad about it, just donate the money to charity. Now, I thought about that for a bit, and I thought, well, that's not a bad idea actually, but which charity do I support? Now, if you've watched my videos for any time, you will notice that sometimes I insert clips at the end or the beginning featuring local wildlife. Now, people seem to enjoy that, especially people that live overseas, because here in Australia we have a lot of very unique wildlife, and people don't normally get to see that if you don't live in this country. Now, the charity that I've decided to support is called Wilvos. Now, they are a wildlife volunteer organisation, and their role is to take sick and injured animals and wildlife and then work with those animals and try to restore them back to a point where they can be released back into the wild. Now, that sort of works out okay for me because where I live, we live adjacent to a national park, and we're going to go on a bit of a road trip in a minute. I'll show you where that is. And we've got a hectare of land here, and when we bought it, it was sort of just full of secondary regrowth that had been slashed and cleared at one point. And then it was basically just big trees, and that was about it, some very degraded soil. Now, over the last 2 years, my wife has joined an organisation called Urban Wildlife Gardens, and their role is to help people create gardens which attract local wildlife. And during that past 2 years, my wife has planted over 2,000 or 3,000 trees and shrubs here, and we now have a sort of environment that's actually encouraging small mammals and small birds to come back to our 1 hectare of land. And the thing about these small mammals and small birds is that they need specific shrub and tree types and grass types which allow them to have cover from predators. And I'll take you for a bit of a walk around the garden. I'll show you some of the planting that my wife has done. And also what we're finding now is that we're getting birds attracted back to this area that we've never seen before. Now, one of them turned up just recently. It's called a buff-banded rail. And it's a weird little bird. It sort of spends all its time scooting around on the ground. Can fly, but it prefers to run around. And they're incredibly quick, and it was quite a lot of work to actually get this short clip of that bird in our garden. But we're also finding now that we're getting lots and lots of other small birds and mammals showing up which we've never seen before. So it's actually working for us, and we do enjoy looking out our kitchen window. We can see the kangaroos outside in the garden. We've seen echidnas, although you only see them at night, so I got some night vision footage of an echidna. We've got lots and lots of species of parrots and small birds. Of course, we've got the kangaroos. We've got some reptiles, goannas, and snakes, and so on. And it gives us a lot of enjoyment to do that. Now, having said that, we do lose a lot of our native wildlife to car strikes, and also dogs and cats and so on. And a lot of those animals end up injured, and they need to be nursed back to good health. So what we're going to do now is going to get in the car, we're going to go for a bit of a road trip, and I'm going to take you to visit a couple of the volunteers that are working with that wildlife, and we'll have a look at what they do and why it's important. So let's get in the car. And here we are travelling out through our front entrance, and as we turn onto the road here, all of the area you can see on the left hand side of the screen is a national park. Now it's 13 square kilometres of natural bushland. It's called Tewantin National Park, and it was probably heavily logged back at the beginning of the 20th century, and you can still see evidence of where the timber getters would have used springboards to elevate themselves. They cut down these very large trees. But it does form an important wildlife corridor and just a natural resource for the area. But we're actually heading to a location called Yandina. It's about half an hour south of where we live, and we're going to meet up with two of the wildlife carers, Sharon and Donna. So I'm here today with Sharon, and Sharon's going to show us a beautiful little swamp wallaby in a minute. But first of all, I just want to ask you about what it is that Wilvo's does and how long you've been involved with them.
Wilvo stands for Wildlife Volunteers. We're a group that was established in 1993. We're involved in the rescue, rehabilitation and release of all native wildlife. We also operate a 24-hour hotline for the rescue of all wildlife on the coast here. We also run workshops for our carers, and we have quite a number of carers. We have about 300 members in Wilvo's who operate in a variety of roles with Wilvo's.
And what is it that attracted you to get involved with Wilvo's?
I've always had a passion for our extraordinary native wildlife that we have in Australia. I was becoming concerned with the increase in the population on the Sunshine Coast, what an impact that was having on our native wildlife, mainly through loss of habitat and wildlife being forced to have interactions with humans just through loss of their habitat and coming into contact with dogs, cars, cats, things like that. So that's what motivated me to become involved, doing my little bit.
Well, we'll have a look at this beautiful little swamp wallaby because he's gorgeous. Is it a he or a she?
It's a he. Okay. His name's Unigan.
Okay.
It's a he.
Unigan.
Yes. Unigan.
Okay.
Yes.
Well.
This is Unigan. He's a swamp wallaby. His mum was hit by a car, and fortunately the person stopped to check the mum, had a look in the pouch and found a live joey in there, which is often the case with kangaroos and wallabies hit by cars, but often the joey will be uninjured. We've had cases of kangaroos where the mum has lain dead on the side of the road for 3 days, and then someone has come along and they were driving past and they noticed the tummy moving on the dead kangaroo, stopped and had a look, and the joey was still alive in the pouch. Not very well, but still alive all the same.
So how many times a day do you feed?
I think this little one is on four feeds a day. And as you saw, he's at an age where he's starting to explore. He hops around the yard. He'll nibble grass. He'll nibble on native trees as well.
Mm-hmm. So how long have you been doing this, Sharon?
I joined Wilvo's about 5.5 years ago. Really enjoy all the aspects of the wildlife. Wilvo's do rescue, rehab and release of native wildlife, all species. We have our 24-hour hotline. We get hundreds and hundreds of calls every year through that. We also liaise with Australia Zoo Wildlife Hospital and Eumundi Wildlife Rehab Centre. We get some animals in care through there as well.
What's the most unusual animal that you've cared for?
The most unusual one I have had would be I had 5 brush-tailed phascogales, which are a small carnivorous marsupial. You don't see them very often. They're very shy, reclusive creatures. They came into care. There was a tree being felled out the back of Kenilworth, and the guy was unaware that there was a nest of phascogales in this tree. The tree came down. He just saw the mum fly out from the tree into the bushes there. He didn't know what it was. He went and had a look in the tree and found 5 tiny little babies in the tree hollow there. Took them to the nearest vet and they called us. And they were only tiny when they came in, so I had to get up and feed them about every 2 hours with a syringe because they were so small. But being such a special animal that people very rarely encounter just because of their reclusive nature.
Okay, Sharon, thank you very much for hosting us today and showing us around, talking about what you do. I think it's important that I get this message across to people who watch my YouTube channel, because I'd like them to know that in their small way they're actually helping to support what you do and what Wilbos do. So again, thank you very much for showing us around. I really appreciate it.
And thank you for giving us the opportunity to talk about our organisation, and we look forward to doing more in the future, and hopefully have some more interesting creatures in care.
That's great.
We'd love to do that. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that little trip to Yandina and meeting Sharon and also another lady, Donna, who didn't appear on camera. But in my view, they do an outstanding job looking after the sick and injured wildlife. And it's important to state that they are volunteers, so they're not being paid for what they do, and there are costs associated with looking after these animals. So while we were there, we were shown some nesting materials that they had to purchase, and these are for very young possums, so they require very specific sorts of enclosures, and these materials had to be purchased from garden centres and hardware stores, so there's a cost there. We were also shown a couple of incubators, and these were being used for raising very, very young parrot chicks, and there's electricity costs associated with that. So I'm hoping that just by you watching these videos, you're contributing to the funds that Wilbos needs to support these volunteers. So just bear that in mind. If you have to sit through a couple of ads, I mean, that was going to happen anyway, but at least this way the revenue is going to those volunteer organisations. Now, this is something that never gets discussed on YouTube, and I suppose you're wondering what sort of dollar amount we're talking about here. So after I went through the whole process of joining this AdSense program, I sat and waited to see how much money was going to roll in the first month. And imagine my surprise when it was about $220. Now that was way more than I expected, and I immediately transferred $200 of that to the Wilbos Society. Now, I'm actually withholding about 10% because I don't know what the tax implications are. I do know that I'm paying tax in the United States, and I'm not sure what happens here in Australia. So if anybody knows, let me know in the comments. But I don't want to get stuck with a tax bill. If it turns out that the ATO don't catch up with me, I'll just transfer the balance to Wilbos. But just in the short term, that's what's happening. So that's it. I just wanted to come clean and tell you what was happening here and let you know that we are supporting a very, very worthy cause in my view, and you're helping along that journey as well. Now, next video, back on a normal programming, I'm going to be working on the float lock vise build, and I've had some interesting information come in between the last episode and this next one, and you'll see that in the next episode. And a few people have helped out with the design of the build, so that's all going to be apparent in the next video. So for now, thanks for watching, and it's Prezzo, and I'll see you on the next video. Cheers.